West Virginia, 1999. Cold case solved. Arrest shocks the community. The knock that broke 21 years of silence. The sun hadn't yet broken over the Charleston, West Virginia skyline when Detective Sarah Hoffman stepped out of her unmarked sedan, her breath visible in the cold January air. It was 6:47 a.m., January 15th, 2020. Behind her, 6 more vehicles rolled to a stop along the quiet suburban street. Tactical units, FBI agents, forensic specialists, all here for one man. The house in front of them looked like every other home on Maple Ridge Drive. A modest 2-story colonial with an American flag hanging from the porch. A kid's basketball hoop stood at an angle in the driveway, its net torn from years of play. Wind chimes tinkled softly in the cold breeze. The kind of place where neighbors borrowed sugar and waved hello, where nothing bad could ever happen, where families felt safe. But Hoffman knew better. Inside her jacket pocket was the arrest warrant she had fought 2 decades to obtain. A warrant that had taken 4 detectives' careers, 3 forensic overhauls, 2 families broken by grief, and 1 miraculous technological breakthrough to finally bring into existence. A warrant that would shatter this peaceful Tuesday morning and expose the truth about a man the entire community trusted. Across the street, an elderly woman, Mrs. Catherine Boyle, peeked out through her living room curtains. Her teacup rattled in her shaking hand. She recognized the house, she recognized the street, but she did not recognize the sight of assault rifles and FBI windbreakers. What on earth? Her breath caught when she saw the armored officer step onto her neighbor's lawn, because the man asleep inside that house, the man they were here to arrest, was someone she had known for almost 20 years, someone who had mowed her lawn, helped her fix her porch light, given Christmas gifts to her grandchildren, a man everyone saw as the perfect neighbor. Richard Allen Morris, age 51, former volunteer youth basketball coach, church treasurer, father of 2. A man no one, not even for a moment, believed capable of murder. A man who had buried a monstrous secret since 1999. Positions. Go! Detective Hoffman nodded toward the tactical team. They moved in silence, spreading across the perimeter with lethal precision. A battering ram gleamed under the streetlight. Hoffman felt the weight of 21 years pressing against her lungs. This was her case, her responsibility, her promise to a grieving mother whose last words had been, "Don't let them forget her." The radio crackled softly. Alpha 1, ready. Bravo 2, ready. Sniper teams in position. All units, green light. Hoffman raised her fist. On my mark. The world held its breath. 3, 2, 1, execute. A thunderous crash shattered the quiet morning as the tactical unit broke the door open, and inside that modest 2-story home, a man jolted awake, the past finally catching up to him. The man who woke up to the past. The crash of the front door slamming inward thundered through the quiet house. On the second floor, Richard Allen Morris bolted upright in bed, heart pounding, breath thick and ragged. For a moment he thought it was a dream, another nightmare from the past, the kind that came to him every January like clockwork. But then he heard it. Boots, voices, shouts. FBI, don't move! He swung his legs off the bed, feet landing on the cold hardwood floor. His mind raced, fast, chaotic, blind panic. His wife, Laura, jolted beside him. What's happening? Richard, what is... Before she could finish, their bedroom door burst open. A beam of tactical flashlight sliced through the darkness. Keep your hands visible! Richard Morris, you are under arrest! Laura screamed. Richard froze, hands trembling in the air. Detective Sarah Hoffman stepped in last, her silhouette framed by the glowing hallway. Her voice was calm, controlled, chillingly final. Richard Allen Morris, you're being placed under federal and state custody for the 1999 murder of Emily Rose Carter. A silence fell so heavy the walls seemed to absorb it. Laura's face twisted in disbelief. Emily? What are you talking about? Richard, say something. But Richard didn't speak, because he remembered that name, every letter of it, every moment of that night 21 years ago. The secret he thought would die with him was suddenly alive again. Handcuffs and history. As officers cuffed Richard, he didn't resist, not because he was innocent, but because he knew resistance was pointless. Hoffman watched his movements carefully, calm, calculated, resigned. These weren't the reactions of a man wrongly accused. Downstairs, officers swept the home. Kitchen, clear. Garage, clear. Basement, clear. But they paused, because in the far corner of the basement, half hidden behind old storage boxes, they found something that didn't belong in a normal suburban home. A locked steel trunk bolted to the concrete, untouched by dust, and humming with the kind of secrecy only the guilty maintain. "Detective," one officer called out, "we've got something." Hoffman's pulse quickened. She had waited years for this. "Catalog it. Photograph everything. No one opens that box but me." Richard heard her words. His breathing stalled. For the first time since they entered the house, fear broke across his face. Neighbors gather by now. Maple Ridge Drive was filling with confused, half-awake neighbors in robes and slippers. News vans began to arrive, lights blinking like vultures circling fresh prey. Mrs. Catherine Boyle, the elderly neighbor who once trusted Richard like family, clutched her coat tighter. "That can't be right," she whispered to a reporter. "Richard, a murderer? No, dear. You must have the wrong house." But cameras zoomed in as Richard was escorted outside, handcuffed, silent, eyes downward. The perfect neighbor. Exposed. A reporter murmured into her microphone, 21 years after the brutal killing of 17-year-old Emily Carter, authorities appear to have made a shocking arrest. Mrs. Boyle covered her mouth. Another neighbor cried. Someone shouted, "How could he?" Someone else whispered, "What else did he do?" Even the morning wind seemed to tremble. Inside the patrol car, Detective Hoffman opened the rear door and gestured for Richard to sit. As he did, she leaned in close, so only he could hear. "You got away with it for 21 years, she said softly. "But Emily didn't." Richard's jaw tightened. For the first time, he spoke. "You don't know anything about that night." Hoffman held his gaze, unblinking. "Oh, Richard, but I do. And soon everyone will." She shut the door. Richard closed his eyes as the car pulled away, sirens silent yet deafening. The past he buried was rising. Piece by piece, bone by bone, truth by truth, and everything began with the name he tried so hard to forget. Emily Rose Carter, 1999. The night Emily Carter disappeared, 1999, January 7th, 1999. Charleston, West Virginia, temperature 29 degrees. Light snow, low visibility teenagers were returning home after winter break, but one girl never made it back. Emily Rose Carter. Age 17. Emily wasn't the kind of girl who disappeared. She was a straight-A senior captain of the high school debate team volunteering at the animal shelter planning to study forensic science. Ironically, to solve crimes like the one she would soon become the victim of. She was quiet but confident. Smart without being arrogant. The kind of girl whose absence you noticed instantly. Her mother, Margaret Carter, always said, "Emily doesn't slip through the cracks, she shines." But on that cold January evening, Emily did slip away into the hands of someone she knew. The last time she was seen. Alive at 7:52 p.m., Emily left the Charleston Public Library, a stack of research papers tucked inside her backpack. Security footage showed her stepping outside the library's glass doors, the faint glow of snowflakes swirling in the yellow streetlights. She made a call from her flip phone. The call lasted 13 seconds. To this day, no one knows what she said. But they know who answered. Richard Allen Morris, then a 30-year-old maintenance worker at the library. They knew each other. Richard helped students carry books and fix vending machines. Emily often stayed late studying, and he was always kind and helpful. At least, that's what she told her mother. At 8:04 p.m., a witness walking his dog saw Emily talking to a man in a dark SUV near the back parking lot. He didn't see the man's face, but he described a tall male wearing a heavy winter coat, driving a dark green Ford Explorer. Richard owned one, but no one knew that at the time. The alarming discovery. At 11:27 p.m., Margaret walked into Emily's room to say goodnight and saw the bed untouched, the pillow still fluffed, the lamp still on, her debate papers still on the desk. A sinking feeling clawed at her stomach. Margaret dialed her daughter's number, straight to voicemail. By midnight, she called 911. My daughter's missing. Something's wrong." Police began their search within the hour. They were confident they'd find her by morning. But dawn came, then a day, then two. Emily was gone. The first suspect. On January 10th, police interviewed library staff. Richard Morris sat calmly in the interrogation room, polite, soft-spoken, helpful. "I left at 7 p.m., he told them, before Emily. I didn't see her." He even signed a statement. No one checked his vehicle. No one checked the camera behind the building because it had been broken for months. Richard had broken it himself. Police moved on to other theories. A runaway, rejected. A boyfriend, she didn't have one. A stranger abduction, unlikely in that area. With no physical evidence, the case slowed, then stopped. And eventually, it froze. A grim discovery. On February 3rd, 1999, 27 days after her disappearance, a hiker found something half buried under melting snow in Kanawha State Forest. A scrap of fabric, blue, torn, blood-stained. It matched the sweater Emily wore the night she vanished. A search began. At 3:42 p.m., they found her, partially covered in leaves, bruised, frozen, and left in a place Richard frequently visited on his days off. The medical examiner confirmed Emily was murdered the night she disappeared, but there were no fingerprints, no DNA, no tire tracks, no witnesses, just a community grieving, and one mother who refused to let the world forget. Margaret Carter said at her daughter's funeral, "Someone out there knows what happened, and one day God will bring the truth to light." It took 21 years, and it began with something no one expected. A piece of DNA recovered in 2019 using technology that didn't exist in 1999. The DNA that spoke after 21 silent years. For 2 decades, the case file labeled Emily R. Carter, 1999, sat inside a metal cabinet in the Charleston Police Department. It collected dust. It changed hands between retiring officers. It moved from shelf to shelf, but never moved forward until 2019. Everything changed because of one tiny piece of evidence everyone had overlooked. A forgotten evidence box. Detective Sarah Hoffman, newly promoted and known for digging into cold cases, was reviewing old unsolved files. Emily's case was the one that stopped her cold. A bright, promising girl, a mother begging for justice, a community still haunted. Hoffman signed the file out and brought the evidence. Box to her desk. Inside, she found Emily's torn blue sweater, her backpack soil samples photographs, and a small envelope labeled partial DNA, insufficient for 1999 analysis. Hoffman froze. Insufficient for 1999 analysis, but not for 2019. DNA technology had transformed, especially forensic genealogy, which had solved cases like the Golden State Killer. Her heartbeat quickened. "This is how we get him," she whispered. But the breakthrough. The evidence was rushed to a state-of-the-art forensic lab. They re-examined everything with next-generation sequencing, touch DNA recovery, advanced mitochondrial tracing. For 2 weeks, Hoffman barely slept. Then, on a Friday afternoon, an email arrived. Subject: Update, DNA partial match. Found Hoffman opened it with shaking hands. A partial male DNA profile had been recovered from the interior fibers of Emily's sweater, not enough to identify a person directly, but enough to run through genealogical databases used for cold cases. The system needed hours to search through millions of potential genetic links. It found 3. All distant cousins, but all 3 cousins shared one common relative. One family, one branch, one man. The genealogist called Hoffman personally. "Detective, it narrows to one suspect." Hoffman held her breath. "Who?" A brief pause. "Richard Allen Morris, age 51, Charleston." Hoffman's skin prickled. She had seen that name earlier in the 1999 interview logs. A maintenance worker. Interviewed once, never suspected seriously. No criminal record, no violence, no problems with neighbors. He blended in so well that detectives overlooked him entirely. But forensic genealogy didn't overlook anyone. Technology had caught what humans had missed. Why Richard was missed in 1999. The deeper Hoffman dug, the angrier she became. 1999 investigators made three critical mistakes. 1. They believed Richard's alibi without verifying it. He said he left at 7 p.m. No one checked. Time cards, surveillance parking logs. His vehicle, his green Ford Explorer, was never searched. 2. The broken parking lot camera was assumed to be vandalized, but in 2019, an engineer discovered records showing the wiring had been intentionally cut. Richard himself had access to the maintenance room. 3. Emily's last 13-second phone call was dismissed. Because of outdated cell tower technology, they couldn't pinpoint who she called. In 2019, digital forensics traced the last tower routing. It matched Richard's neighborhood. Hoffman stared at her computer screen, horrified. He was right in front of them, she whispered. The Silent Watcher. Before seeking a warrant, Hoffman began surveillance. For 3 months, she and her team monitored Richard's movements, church treasurer meetings, coaching youth basketball, grocery store runs, family dinners, quiet evenings in his basement workshop. He was calm, predictable, helpful. A man who had lived 21 years with a secret, learned to smile through it and convince the world he was harmless. But there were cracks. He drove the same model SUV he had in 1999. He took solo night walks into nearby woods. He kept the basement door locked at all times. He had an unexplained fear of January, Emily's anniversary month, and most importantly, his DNA-carrying cousins pointed directly to him in genealogical triangulation. It was enough for a judge. The Warrant, January 12, 2020. Detective Hoffman walked into the Kanawha County Courthouse. She placed the genealogical report on the judge's desk. He flipped through the pages, stopped, looked up. "This solves it, doesn't it?" Hoffman nodded. "I believe he killed her, and I believe he kept something, trophies maybe, something in his house." The judge didn't hesitate. Warrant granted. And that warrant, slipped into her jacket pocket, carried her to January 15, 2020. The morning Richard's quiet life shattered. The morning they broke down his door. The morning he met the past again. The box in the basement. For hours after Richard's arrest, the forensic team worked methodically inside the house. Camera flashes lit the rooms, every object bagged, labeled, and logged. But the real battle, the one Hoffman had been waiting for, was happening in the basement. She stood in front of it now. A steel trunk, heavy, bolted to the concrete floor, locked with an industrial-grade padlock, no dust on top, no rust, no signs of age, meaning Richard had been opening it recently. Hoffman's breath slowed. "All right, she said. "Let's open it." 2 forensic technicians brought over a precision cutting tool. Sparks flew as the metal groaned. The padlock snapped. A silence swallowed the basement. Everyone stepped back. "Detective?" a technician asked. Hoffman nodded. "Open it." Inside the box, the lid creaked upward with a soft metallic moan, and the moment it opened, a smell escaped, old, dry, like aged paper mixed with something darker. Hoffman leaned in, and what she saw inside froze her blood. 1. A blue sweater button. A single plastic button, cracked, stained at the edge. Hoffman recognized it immediately. It matched Emily Carter's torn sweater. 2. A gold locket, heart-shaped, chain broken. Inside was a tiny photo of a teenage girl smiling. Emily. Her mother had mentioned the missing locket in 1999. Richard had kept it. 3. Newspaper clippings. Every article about Emily's disappearance. Hoarded, preserved, dated, underlined. Words circled in red ink. Missing. Unsolved. Cold case. Richard watched himself disappear into anonymity and was proud of it. 4. A VHS tape label. Jan 07, 1999. Hoffman's throat tightened. "Please tell me this isn't what I think it is," she whispered. The tape was immediately secured and bagged for digital conversion. 5. A spiral notebook filled with handwritten pages, dates, times, locations, and sentences that made Hoffman's skin crawl. "She trusted me. Only 13 seconds on the phone. Snow covered everything. No one will ever know. A confession without writing the word confession." 6. Something wrapped in cloth. Hoffman's hands shook slightly. She unfolded the fabric. Inside was a silver hairclip, clean, untarnished, as if polished regularly. Margaret Carter had told detectives in 1999, "Emily never went anywhere without her hairclip. I bought it for her 15th birthday." Richard had kept it for 21 years. There was no doubt. This was Emily's, and this box was his shrine. The entire team goes silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. Even the air felt colder. One tech muttered, "Monsters don't look like monsters." Hoffman swallowed hard. "They look like neighbors," she said quietly. The VHS tape, a horrifying revelation. Back upstairs, the forensic media specialist played the VHS tape using protected viewing equipment. Dusty footage flickered onto the monitor. The date stamp, 017-9999, time 8:11 p.m., snow falling, low visibility, a dark parking lot, then a teenage girl walking fast, hugging her backpack, looking around. Emily. Hoffman covered her mouth. A dark SUV rolled into frame. Driver steps out. Tall, winter coat, hat pulled low. He speaks to her. She hesitates. He steps closer. She tries to back away. He grabs her arm. Emily struggles. He shoves her into the SUV. Door slams. The vehicle pulls away. Hoffman felt tears forming, of rage, of grief, of vindication. "Richard, you filmed it," she whispered. "You filmed yourself taking her." And then came the worst part. The camera lingered in place. Someone walked back into frame, picked up the tripod, turned it off. The last blurry frame revealed the killer's face. Richard Morris, younger, calm, expressionless, like he had done nothing wrong. Hoffman's breaking point. She stepped away from the monitor, hands trembling, vision blurred. This case had lived in her mind for years. Emily's photo pinned above her desk, her mother's broken voice calling every January. And now she finally had the truth. She whispered, "We've got him, Emily. We finally got him." The press conference. Hours later, a crowd gathered outside the Charleston Police Department. Cameras, reporters, microphones raised like weapons. Detective Hoffman took the podium, her voice steady, but her eyes carrying the weight of 2 decades. "Today, after 21 years, we have arrested Richard Allen Morris for the abduction and murder of Emily Rose Carter. New DNA technology and recovered evidence led to his identification. We have secured physical proof linking him directly to the crime." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone yelled, "He coached our kids!" Another cried, "I trusted him!" Hoffman finished, "Justice may come late, but it came." Inside his holding cell. That night, Richard sat alone. No smile, no calmness, no mask, just silence. For the first time in 21 years, he whispered, "I knew the box would get me." Then he closed his eyes and waited for the interrogation he could no longer avoid. The interrogation. The room was small, cold, bare. Just a metal table, 2 chairs, and a buzzing fluorescent light that flickered like it was losing patience. Richard Morris sat with his wrists cuffed, staring at the table as though it might swallow him whole. Detective Sarah Hoffman entered quietly. She carried only 2 items, a slim folder, a small TV remote. She placed the folder on the table, sat down across from him, didn't say a word. Silence stretched. Richard finally looked up. "You think you know everything," he said, voice low, flat. Hoffman leaned back. "I don't think," she replied. "I know." The calm before the storm. Richard's lawyer had not yet arrived. He had waived initial counsel, a move Hoffman knew was both foolish and telling. People who are innocent demand lawyers. Guilty men sometimes think they can talk their way out. Richard folded his hands. "Ask your questions." "Oh, I will," Hoffman said softly. But first, she pressed the TV remote. The wall monitor lit up, static, then grainy footage. The parking lot, 1999, snow falling. Emily Carter walks into frame, Richard's face drained of color. Hoffman watched him carefully. On the screen, the dark SUV approached. He grabbed Emily, forced her into the vehicle. Then, the final frame. His own face staring directly at the camera. Richard's fingers curled into fists. "That wasn't supposed to still exist," he whispered. Hoffman raised a brow. "So you admit it's you?" Richard froze. He had walked into her trap. The first crack. "I didn't mean to kill her," Richard said suddenly, voice trembling. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way." Hoffman kept her face still. Inside, her pulse surged. "Then tell me what was supposed to happen." Richard swallowed hard. "She trusted me. All of them trusted me." "All of who, Richard?" Hoffman asked. A long silence. Richard looked up slowly, and for the first time, Hoffman saw darkness in his eyes. Not panic, not regret, but ownership. "Girls who needed guidance," he said quietly. "Girls who didn't understand the world." Hoffman's blood chilled. "Emily understood more than you ever gave her credit for." Richard shook his head. "She didn't listen. She was going to tell someone we talked. She saw me that night at the library. She looked scared. I panicked." "Why did you call her?" Hoffman asked. "Because she wasn't supposed to walk home alone," he muttered. "She said she'd tell her mom I was bothering her. I couldn't let that happen." "So you abducted her?" Hoffman pressed. Richard's jaw clenched. "I just wanted to talk." Hoffman slammed the folder open. Inside were photographs, Emily's hair clip from the box, her sweater button. The notebook containing Richard's writings. Richard stared at them, his breath uneven. Hoffman leaned forward. "You kept trophies, Richard. That's not just talking. That's not panic. That's not an accident." His eyes flickered. She continued. "That's possession." The breaking point. Hoffman placed one final photograph on the table. Emily's frozen body, found in the forest. Richard shut his eyes. "Please," he whispered, "don't show me that." "Why?" Hoffman asked coldly. "Because it reminds you of what you did." Richard shook violently. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted her to listen, but she kept screaming. She tried to run. I grabbed her, harder than I meant to. She fell, hit her head on the car door. It was snowing so much, I didn't know if she was breathing." "And then?" Hoffman asked quietly. "I panicked," Richard said. "I drove to the forest. I thought she was already gone." "She wasn't," Hoffman replied. "You left her alive in the snow." Richard's eyes snapped open, horrified. "What?" "She died of exposure," Hoffman whispered. "You didn't kill her in the car. You left her to freeze." Richard's face collapsed like glass shattering. "No, no, 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 no. I thought she was already—" He broke, shoulders shaking, face buried in his cuffed hands, whispers flooding the room. I didn't check. I just needed her gone. I just needed the fear to stop." Hoffman let the silence hang. Then she leaned in slowly. "And you lived with that for 21 years. Richard didn't respond. He didn't have to. His silence was the confession. "The last question." Hoffman closed her notebook. "One more thing, Richard." He looked up, exhausted. "What? Were there others?" The room turned to ice. Richard blinked once, twice, then a long, sickening smile crawled across his face. "Detective, you opened the wrong box." Hoffman's breathing hitched. "What does that mean?" Richard leaned forward, whispering, "Check the woods behind my old workplace." She froze. His smile widened. "You won't find everyone, but you might find one." Hoffman stood abruptly. "Interview is over," she said sharply. As she walked out, her hands shook, not from fear, but from fury. Because this wasn't just a murder, it might be the beginning of another investigation, one far darker. Here is the next continuation, fully matching the tone, pacing, atmosphere, and investigative style of the previous chapters. Across the street, the Hopkins family, who had lived on Maple Ridge Drive for almost 30 years, watched from behind their living room curtains as the swarm of agents moved with silent precision. Mrs. Hopkins clutched her husband's arm. "John, that's Mark's house," she whispered, disbelief trembling through her voice. "I know," he replied, eyes fixed, jaw set. "God help us. What did he do?" But before the couple could process anything, a sharp, echoing command sliced through the icy morning air. "Final warning! Open the door now!" Inside the house, Mark Talbot stumbled into the hallway, still pulling a shirt over his shoulders. He froze when he saw the red and blue lights flickering through the blinds. For a few seconds, he didn't move. His expression hardened, not in panic but in resignation, as though he had been waiting for this moment his entire life. Downstairs, his wife, Emily, rushed from the kitchen, her voice quivering. "Mark, what's happening? Who are they? What did you—" Mark didn't answer. Instead, he took one long breath, then raised his hands and stepped toward the front door. The instant he unlocked it and pushed it open, agents surged forward. "Mark Talbot, down on your knees!" He obeyed without protest. Neighbors opened blinds. Others stepped out onto porches in slippers and robes, watching as the man they had barbecued with, shared beers with, and trusted with their kids was handcuffed on his own front lawn. Detective Hoffman stepped forward, her voice steady and formal. "Mark Talbot, you are under arrest for the kidnapping and murder of Rebecca Hale, committed on June 19, 1999. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rebecca Hale. The name hit the community like a hammer. The 17-year-old who vanished after her late shift at the Buckley Diner. The girl whose photo had once hung in every West Virginia gas station. The case that had haunted Charleston for 2 decades. Emily staggered backward. "Mark, no! Tell them they're wrong! Tell them!" But Mark lowered his eyes, unable or unwilling to speak. 1999. The night Rebecca disappeared. June 19, 1999. 12:14 a.m. Buckley Diner. Parking lot. Rebecca Hale pushed open the back door and stepped into the humid summer night. It was her last week before leaving for Marshall University. She had plans, a journalism major, an internship waiting, a future so bright everyone in town believed she was destined for greatness. She locked the door as she always did. She pulled out her flip phone, typed a message to her best friend. "Just clocked out, home in 10. She never hit send. A pair of headlights appeared at the far end of the parking lot. A familiar pickup truck rolled toward her. "Need a ride?" the driver asked, smiling in a way that made Rebecca's stomach tighten. She shook her head. "No thanks, my car's right here." But the man stepped out anyway. Mark Talbot. Back then, 27 years old. A part-time mechanic. Charming, friendly, the kind of guy people trusted. Rebecca took a step back. "Mark, I'm good, really." He stopped, looked at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, dark, determined. "That's a shame," he said quietly, "because I can't let you leave." Everything after that would be pieced together 21 years later. DNA traces, carpet fibers, cleaning agent residues, phone tower pings. But that night, the truth disappeared into the darkness, and Rebecca Hale vanished with it. 2020. Back to the arrest scene. As officers placed Mark into the back of a federal transport vehicle, Detective Hoffman approached a shell-shocked Emily Talbot, who stood barefoot on the frozen driveway. "Mrs. Talbot," Hoffman said softly, "I know this is overwhelming, but we need to ask a few immediate questions." Emily wiped tears with shaking hands. "He's a good man. He helps coach Little League. He volunteers at the shelter. He loves our kids. He would never hurt anyone." Hoffman glanced at the 2 upstairs windows where small, sleepy faces watched their father being taken away. "I understand," Hoffman said, "but we're executing a search warrant. We need access to the basement, his workshop, and the shed." Emily's breath hitched. "The shed? Why the shed?" Hoffman didn't answer directly. Instead, she motioned toward the forensic unit carrying high-resolution ground-penetrating scanners, normally used in homicide digs. Inside the shed was where the new evidence had pointed, evidence no one had ever expected to find. The basement discovery. 7 hours later, after exhaustive grid searches, photos, and forensic sweeps, Hoffman stood in Mark's basement with FBI forensic analyst Dr. Lena Briggs. Briggs pointed to a corner of the concrete floor where a faint rectangular outline was visible. "Smell that?" Briggs asked. Hoffman nodded. "Bleach, strong, and recent." Briggs scraped a thin layer from the concrete surface. This section was cleaned aggressively, much more than any other part of the basement. "Meaning," Hoffman said, "he wasn't cleaning. He was erasing." Briggs turned, lowering her voice. "And that's not the only thing." She held up a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a single item, a 1998 Marshall University keychain, corroded, scratched, and unmistakably belonging to Rebecca Hale. Hoffman's jaw tightened. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the piece we've been missing." Briggs nodded grimly. "And we found more." She pointed toward a stack of old tool chests. Behind them, Wedged between the wall and a wooden support beam was a small strip of fabric, pale green, aged but still distinct. Rebecca's shirt had been pale green. Hoffman felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "We've got him," she said. "After 21 years, we finally got him." Here's the next. Continuation, perfectly matching the tone, pacing, and style of everything before. The interrogation begins. Hours after his arrest, Mark Talbot sat alone in interview room 3 of the Kanawha County Sheriff's Office. The room was small, windowless, lit by a single fluorescent bulb that buzzed faintly above him. Mark sat perfectly still. Not angry, not nervous, just waiting. When Detective Sarah Hoffman and FBI agent Daniel Rourke finally entered, Mark lifted his eyes slowly. Hoffman placed a thick case file on the table. 21 years' worth of photos, reports, and evidence summaries. Rourke began the audio recorder. Interview with Mark Allen Talbot, January 15, 2020. Subject charged with the 1999 abduction and murder of Rebecca Hale. He paused. "Mark, you have waived your right to an attorney for this initial discussion. Is that correct?" Mark nodded. "Yes." Hoffman leaned forward, her eyes sharp but calm. "Then let's start with something simple. Why now?" A strange smirk flickered across Mark's face. "I knew this day would come," he said quietly. "I'm surprised it took you so long." Hoffman maintained her composure. "You didn't hide well enough," Mark chuckled under his breath. "I hid perfectly. You just got lucky." Rourke slid a small evidence photo across the table, the corroded Marshall University keychain found in his basement. Mark's expression faltered for the first time. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "From your basement," Hoffman answered, "behind your tool chests, right where you shoved it in 1999. Mark's jaw tightened. "That shouldn't have still been there." "And yet," Rourke said, leaning back in his chair, "here it is." The interrogation room fell into silence. Then Hoffman placed another photo in front of him, the pale green fabric fragment, the same color as Rebecca's shirt. Mark swallowed hard. Hoffman's voice dropped. "Mark, it's over. We found everything." For the first time, Mark's hands trembled. "I didn't mean to kill her," he whispered. Hoffman exchanged a quick glance with Rourke. There it was, the first crack in his armor. 1999. What really happened? Mark exhaled slowly, then stared at the table as if replaying memories he had buried for decades. "She didn't get into my truck willingly," he began. His voice was low, distant. "I just wanted to talk to her." Hoffman kept her tone steady. "You knew she was leaving for college." A long pause. "She said I creeped her out," Mark whispered. "A few days before, I overheard her laughing about it with her friends at the diner, like I was some joke." "So you decided to scare her?" Rourke asked. Mark nodded once. "I thought if I could just talk, make her understand I wasn't who she thought I was, she'd change her mind." "And?" Hoffman asked. "She fought," Mark said, his voice cracking. "She scratched me. She screamed. I panicked." His eyes drifted upward, unfocused. "I dragged her into the truck. I just wanted her to calm down, but she wouldn't stop screaming." "What happened next?" Hoffman pressed. Mark swallowed hard. "I hit her, once, too hard." A tear slipped down his cheek. "She started vomiting. She couldn't breathe right. She was shaking. I tried to help her, but it was too late." Hoffman felt her stomach twist, not out of sympathy, but out of the weight of hearing the truth after decades of silence. "You killed her," she said. Mark closed his eyes. "Yes." The cover-up. Mark ran a hand through his hair, breathing heavily. "I panicked. I drove her to my house. Everyone was asleep. I took her to the basement and I didn't know what to do." He clenched his fists tightly. "I wrapped her body. I cleaned everything. I scrubbed the floor for hours." Rourke asked, "What did you do with her afterward?" Mark took a shaky breath. "I buried her, not deep. I thought, if no one found her that night, they never would." Hoffman leaned in. "Where, Mark?" His eyes twitched. "I didn't bury her in the woods like people suspected." He raised his gaze slowly. "I buried her under the old Piermont Road overpass, construction site, fresh dirt everywhere. No one would notice another patch of soil." Hoffman froze. That site had been rebuilt entirely in 2007. "Are you saying," she whispered, "that Rebecca's remains are still there, under the new structure?" Mark nodded miserably. "You'll never find her." Hoffman stood so abruptly her chair scraped against the floor. "Watch us," she said through clenched teeth. The search operation. By noon the next day, dozens of FBI archaeologists and crime scene technicians surrounded the Piermont Road overpass. Traffic was rerouted. News helicopters thrummed overhead. The scene was sealed. Ground-penetrating radar swept every inch of soil beneath the old foundation line. At 3:42 p.m., a technician raised their hand. "Detective Hoffman, here. We have an anomaly." A small coffin-sized disturbance beneath the concrete, exactly the right size. Hoffman's breath hitched. "Start digging." Within minutes, shovels scraped dirt, buckets moved soil. Every movement was precise, controlled. Then, a plastic sheet emerged, wrapped tightly, preserved by time and compression. Hoffman dropped to her knees. "Rebecca, we found you," she whispered. The recovery. The excavation team worked in complete silence as the final layers of soil were brushed away. Detective Hoffman stood close, her gloves trembling slightly. For 21 years, Rebecca Hale had been a name whispered in classrooms, in church halls, in grocery store lines, a ghost of Charleston, a reminder of a nightmare without an ending. Now, that ending was finally unfolding. Dr. Lena Briggs, the lead forensic anthropologist, knelt beside the partially exposed bundle. "Slow and steady," she instructed. Her voice, usually sharp and analytical, was softer than usual, almost reverent. Bit by bit, the plastic wrap was peeled away. Inside were the fragile remains of a young girl, bones curled into themselves, as if she had been trying to shield her own body even in death. Next to her rib cage, tucked beneath one arm, was an object no one expected. A small silver locket. Hoffman exhaled sharply. "That's Rebecca's. Her father gave it to her when she turned 16. Briggs carefully removed the locket. Inside was a faded, moisture-damaged photograph of Rebecca and her younger brother Joshua smiling on a fishing pier. A moment frozen in time. A life frozen in the dirt. Hoffman swallowed hard. "We're taking her home." The remains were lifted with surgical precision into a sealed transport container. Officers stood in two lines as the container was carried past them, a silent honor guard. Even the construction workers nearby removed their hats. For the first time since 1999, Charleston felt the weight of a collective grief breaking open and beginning, slowly, to heal. The news reaches. Rebecca's family. Rebecca's mother, Linda Hale, sat on her porch when the black SUVs rolled up the driveway. Her hands shook as she slowly rose to her feet. "Detective Hoffman," she whispered as the officer approached. "You found her, didn't you?" Hoffman nodded gently. "We did, and she's coming home." Linda covered her mouth, her knees weakening. Tears flooded her eyes before she could stop them. "For 21 years, she said, voice breaking, "I prayed every night for this. I prayed she wasn't alone. I prayed she wasn't forgotten." "She wasn't," Hoffman said softly. "We never stopped looking." Linda gathered herself enough to ask the question she had feared since 1999. Did she suffer? Hoffman chose her words carefully. "She fought," she said, "because she was strong and she was brave. But she didn't suffer long." Linda nodded slowly, her lips trembling. "I always knew. She wouldn't go without a fight." Hoffman reached into her jacket and pulled out the locket. "We found this with her." Linda's breath caught. My God, she kept it. Her fingers traced the worn edges. She took Joshua with her. Tears poured freely as Hoffman held her hands. "Now," Linda whispered, "she can finally rest." Emily Talbot confronts reality. At the same time, across town, Emily Talbot sat at her dining table, staring at a stack of police documents the agents had left with her. Her hands trembled as she looked at a photo of Rebecca Hale taken just days before her disappearance. Her husband's victim. A girl only a few years older than their own daughter. The door opened and Detective Rourke stepped inside. "Mrs. Talbot, we found her remains." Emily pressed her palms against her face. "Oh, God! Mark!" What did you do? Rourke sat across from her. I know this is unbearable, but we're going to need to ask you some more questions about Mark's behavior back in 1999. Emily shook her head. No, he was different back then. Quiet. Withdrawn. But evil? A murderer? He can't be that man. Rourke gently slid a photo across the table. The Marshall University keychain. Emily stared at it. I've never seen that before. That's because he hid it, Rourke said softly. Deep in your basement. Emily's voice cracked. I shared a life with him, a home, children. I thought I knew him. Rourke's expression softened. Sometimes the people we trust most carry the darkest secrets. Emily looked toward the hallway where her kids were playing. How do I tell them their father is a monster? She whispered. Rourke hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because no answer could ever ease that kind of pain. Mark makes a final, chilling admission. Back in the interrogation room, Mark sat with his head bowed, silent, until Hoffman re-entered. We found her, she said coldly. Mark closed his eyes. I knew you would. There's one thing you didn't tell us, Hoffman continued. Why Rebecca? Why her out of all the girls who worked at that diner? Mark didn't look up. Because she was kind to me, he whispered. Hoffman blinked. Kind? Mark nodded. She smiled at me once, just once. Most girls ignored me, but she didn't. She asked about my day. She treated me like I mattered. His voice grew twisted, trembling. But then I heard her laughing about me, like I was just some pathetic loser, like her kindness meant nothing. He raised his eyes, filled with something hollow. I couldn't let her leave, not after that, not when she owed me more. Hoffman stepped back slightly. There it was, the truth, not just of Rebecca's death, but of the darkness Mark Talbot had hidden from everyone around him, a darkness that could have claimed more victims, a darkness that had finally come undone.